Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And I'd like to continue on, if I may, with regard to what I refer to, maybe for lack of a better phrase, memories of cinema, or my own cinematic journey as I grew up. In some past videos, I took the opportunity to speak about my memories with regard to growing up in the 80s and experiencing VHS rental stores. I also spoke, I think, about how I first discovered the work of Akira Kurosawa and how that came in a very critical part of my own adolescence. And so I wanted to mention one more, what I could call a kind of milestone or landmark or very important period in my own cinematic upbringing that was so crucial, I would say, that I think without it I wouldn't be where I am right now in terms of my kind of a view or perspective on cinema and films and the movies. And this was during my undergraduate years at university. So I've mentioned it before, but so let me just mention it again very briefly, which is that I went to university undergrad in the United States in Connecticut, which is on the East Coast. This was Yale University, and it's in a city called New Haven, Connecticut. And so it was 4 years. And during this time, I think it was a very interesting time, but one of the reasons why I think it was very interesting was because I can honestly say that I think during this period of 4 years as an undergraduate, this was the period where I think I was watching the most films in my life. In other words, this was the most intense cinema watching period. I think I watched more films during this 4-year period than I did at any other part of my life. And this was a period where I was young and I was just discovering cinema, and I was 18, 19, that sort of thing, 17, 18, 19, and I was just discovering new films, and so I was hungry, and I was even becoming hungrier and hungrier every time I saw a new film. And it was just a glorious time, and especially the facilities at the university. There was a place on campus called the Whitney Humanities Center, and in the basement of such humanities center there was a place called the Yale Film Study Center, which in essence was a film and video library of the university. And you'd go in, it was in the basement, you'd go in and there would be someone at the front, and then there was a catalog that you look through which had all the films in the Yale Film Study Center in alphabetical order. And then you'd ask the person, you'd find what you were looking for, and you'd ask the person if you could watch this film, and then they'd go to a temperature-controlled room in the back. They'd retrieve whatever film I requested and come back, and then I would then be allowed to use the on-site facilities, VHS player or DVD player or a Laserdisc player. So they had viewing booths, which were desks with dividers in between them. But this was a viewing booth with headsets, and so I could watch a film there. And this was true for anyone who is a student or a faculty member or otherwise a member of the university community. And this was a very exciting place because, first of all, this Film Study Center's catalog and collection was incredibly vast. Now, I was coming from high school, and at high school was, of course, I had access to films via VHS rental stores. Blockbuster, I think, was around then, libraries, etc., and also what was being broadcast on TV. But that, of course, meant that the amount of films would still be limited. This was, of course, before now we have Blu-ray and DVD, and you can essentially get almost anything you want at the touch of a button. And especially with good streaming services, that is even more apparent now. But back in the day, that wasn't necessarily the case. So there was an issue with regard to accessibility. In other words, you'd be reading film books about these great filmmakers and these great films, but not necessarily being able to access them necessarily. But when I arrived at university, and I found this great facility and these great resources, I was just I felt in heaven. I loved the place, and I went there daily, and I watched as many movies as I could. And again, I was 17, 18, so this was when I was making my discoveries into filmmakers that I had hitherto had not been able to watch. And so this is where I made some very substantive discoveries into films of Fassbinder, Godard. Godard was an incredible journey, especially because at the time, many Jean-Luc Godard films were really difficult to find. And so the Film Study Center actually had rare copies of some films that you could only watch. Sometimes they were on poor quality VHS, but still it was better than nothing. And it was such an exciting time to watch that. I can't admit, I admit to not being able to have understood everything, every single facet of the Godard films that I watched, but still it was great to be exposed to this kind of cinema. And so I was able, therefore, to make these great discoveries and further my interest in these great filmmakers from all over the world, and it was an incredible time. And then I was able to work, to apply to work there, and I was accepted to work at the Film Study Center. And I worked at the Film Study Center kind of part-time when I was still a student, working at the desk and seeing how it worked out there. And through that, I was able further to make my own sort of explorations. I was able to, for example, in my spare time, just appreciate what was in the Film Study Center archive and see what the 60mm prints were. I learned how to use a 60mm projector, and I was therefore able, with permission from the people who worked there, to screen and to confirm the quality of certain prints. And so there were some really, at the time, very rare 60mm prints of films that you couldn't see because of their lack of availability. And so I was able to watch a lot of these films. It was a really exciting time. And I think back on it now, and I think, my goodness, what a great opportunity that was to have been able, when I was 17, 18, to watch these rare prints and the like. And I was also able to watch a lot of the Laserdiscs, because they had a really good Laserdisc collection. This was, remember, in the late 90s, and so DVD had just started, was just about to be released as a sort of commercial market, but still at the time there was VHS, and then to a certain degree Laserdiscs. And so to have the ability to watch Laserdiscs was a really, really big deal back in the day. And so that was a wonderful way to be able to further my own cinematic journey, and also just being able to meet the people there who frequented the facilities. There were a lot of very well-known people in the faculty, for example. There are many experts. So, for instance, I would be able to encounter people who were, say, experts in Japanese cinema one day, and then someone who was an expert in Godard. Here was another expert in Oscar Micheaux films. Here was another expert in Martin Scorsese works and works of 1970s American cinema. D.A. Pennebaker. There was a period where D.A. Pennebaker, I think, was a visiting lecturer or teacher, and so he taught classes there for a certain period of time. Now, I never took a class with D.A. Pennebaker. I never had the good fortune to have been able to do so, but I do remember him coming to the Yale Film Study Center and visiting the facilities, and I showed him around a little bit, and so he's looking there at some of the rooms, and it was really great. And I remember my boss who worked there, who's a big fan of cinema and a big fan of D.A. Pennebaker's, and it was a really wonderful time to see his reaction as well. And this was in the late 90s, I want to say, or maybe early 2000s, and so, and just being able to speak with people there who were so knowledgeable about films and the like. And I was so fortunate to have been able to engage with these discussions with students and faculty members who were very generous with their time. There were some people there, I remember, this is around the time where Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, had just been released in the theaters, and I remember just talking with people about their reactions to the film, and these were really big Star Wars fans at the time, and I remember one person being so intensely talking to me about how he really couldn't understand how, considering the amount of time there was between the story of the Phantom Menace and Star Wars A New Hope, and Empire Strikes Back, he didn't quite understand how, considering the character of Yoda and the fact that Yoda is this years old being, how he could still look that young in the Phantom Menace compared to how he looked in Empire Strikes Back. But if you think about the way in which, let's say, human beings would age, it wouldn't necessarily sit that he would look so young. He would probably look, or maybe should look, a little bit closer in age to how he looked in The Empire Strikes Back. But anyway, I remember this student, he was just talking so intensely about this with me, and I was kind of enthralled by this. It was a really interesting conversation. And there were other great conversations there as well. There was a lot of great, this was around the time that David Lynch's Mulholland Drive came out, and there were some great conversations about Mulholland Drive, and it was a really powerful work when it first landed, and it still resonates, of course, to this very day. But those were really wonderful times well spent, and I remember there was one person in particular who was just talking and just being so enthusiastic about the film Bad Ronald. I don't know if you know this film, Bad Ronald, but he was just talking about Bad Ronald, and it was one of those really key films for him. And it was wonderful to hear his enthusiasm for the film Bad Ronald. And he just loved it. And this gentleman, who was also a student, he was so knowledgeable about cinema. He knew every single thing about every movie, and I'd ask him a question, he'd just know everything. He loved Orson Welles, and he knew Citizen Kane inside and out, and he was also a big expert in Alfred Hitchcock. I think he must have read every book, every text that existed with respect to Alfred Hitchcock, and so he knew not only every Hitchcock film line by line, scene by scene, but he also knew all the scholarship and all the arguments that were made by all the scholars who were published and that wrote about Hitchcock. So this was a very smart man, and he was such a brilliant man, and I just remember his deep enthusiasm for Bad Ronald, and so that really was very effective on me, and it sort of resonates and it just lingers on to this very day. And so whenever I think of Bad Ronald, I always think of him, and I hope he's doing well in these times. And those sorts of discussions were there, and so I'd be there, and I'd be talking with people who are really. I remember this one student as well. Such a nice guy, and he was so much enamored by the film Fight Club. And this film had just been released as well. So Fight Club, and he was talking about Fight Club so much. And I think at the time, the general consensus among my own film friends on campus was that it was a good movie, but it maybe that was it. But for this man, this student, he really was intensely into it, and he understood, I think before we all did, just its sort of cultural impact. And it's a film that even now, is very, I would say, culturally significant in a lot of ways. And so this young man, this gentleman, this student, he was in many ways, I would say, ahead of the curve. And it was wonderful to hear his intense enthusiasm for the film and its themes, and how it presented a certain type of outlook on life and on masculinity. And so it was wonderful to hear his take on it, and the like. And so this was just a wonderful time to have been able to just absorb all these different viewpoints from many different people, not just experts in their fields, because there certainly were a lot of experts, great deal of experts, academics who are writing about cinema. There are Fellini experts. There were some Mizoguchi experts just coming in and just talking, academic scholars just talking about Mizoguchi, just the finest details. Ozu experts, of course, and that was a brilliant thing for me, as I say, 17, 18, just sitting there absorbing all this information, just sitting in awe, just trying my best to keep up and failing miserably, but it was still worth it just to be able to sit there and listen to these great people speak. And then to just meeting different, being able to meet different people, not just scholars and experts in their field, but also students who were just enthusiastic and excited about their own films at the time. And so I was just really taken by this period. On top of that, I was able, of course, to have access to the films in the Yale Film Study Center, and I just tried to watch as many of the films as I could. Anything that I could, and it was sort of a rule, I tried to watch a film a day, and I made a point to be sure to watch something that I had never seen before. So I had made a point to watch a new film every day. Now, I think that was probably a bit too ambitious because I can see now that it's a very difficult thing to retain all that information and to watch a film and then try to linger on it and to consider it is part of the joy and fun. And so to take one's time with cinema, that's my approach now. But back in the day, as I said, I was much younger, and I felt that it was a world that was just opening up to me for the first time, and so I was hungrier and hungrier for cinema, and so I tried to watch new films as much as possible. So that was a really, really great thing. And also it was a really lovely community too. I would say also that when I was even outside of the Yale Film Study Center, there were many great facilities and opportunities to watch cinema. There were film societies, student-run film societies that were able to show screenings of these really obscure and fantastic films. And so it would be one thing where maybe you'd be doing your homework for a particular class, and at the end of it you'd be maybe tired, so it would be the weekend. So what would you do? You'd check out the what was it? I remember the medical school had its own film society. There was a Yale Film Society as well, and I remember the medical school film society had a really eclectic lineup. They'd be showing Wim Wenders film one day, and then a Fassbinder film the next, and maybe a Bresson film the next, or that sort of thing. And the film society itself was really great. That was where I was able to watch Seven Samurai on 35 millimeter, in glorious 35 millimeter, again in the Whitney Humanities Center auditorium, which is on the first floor, just above the Yale Film Study Center, which is on the basement. So, and I was able to watch many other films in 35 millimeters. It was a fantastic time. It was really great. But there were also there's a great theater in New Haven. York Square is the theater there, and York Square Cinema, and that was a wonderful. I met so many lovely people who worked there and who frequented the theater. I remember that was where I saw so many films like Afterlife, the Koreeda film Afterlife. I remember it was playing. It was released in the United States around the time that I was a student, and I remember it playing there. And I watched it so many times. Also, Mike Leigh's film Career Girls, which was the film that he did after Secrets and Lies, and I saw that film so many times. I was so taken with the film Career Girls. I think in part because there was a story that had a large part of its film focus on student life. And so I think I was able in that way to relate in some degree to the characters and their student life stories that were depicted in that film. What a lovely film, and a very powerful and quite complex one indeed. And there was also a great sort of music scene and sort of indie film music scene in New Haven as well, and so I was able to meet people who were from the New Haven community and who were really big experts in cinema, and there were some really great experts. That's where I really really grew to love and appreciate and admire the works of David Lynch, because David Lynch was really, the New Haven film community was really into David Lynch, and I was just I became so much into David Lynch because of that, and they taught me so many things about David Lynch that I didn't know, and they taught me like Eye of the Duck, and they really helped me and discussed with me and let me also discuss with them aspects. And those were at the time films like Lost Highway and The Straight Story were coming out, and so that was a really exciting time, and it furthered my own sort of cinematic education both on campus and off campus, so to speak. And it was also great too, because it allowed me to I just felt at the time, I don't know if this might seem a little bit arrogant for me to say, I'm not sure, but I felt like there's that in the film GoldenEye, the Pierce Brosnan James Bond film GoldenEye, I am invincible, right? I felt that way. I am invincible. I felt in a way I felt like this was the sky was the limit in terms of cinema discovery, and I felt every day was a new discovery, and I felt also every day was not just a new discovery but also a new opportunity to be able to speak with someone and hear their ideas and that sort of thing. And so I think back on those years, and I think I wish on the one hand I'm so grateful for the opportunities that were afforded to me, and I wish that I do have a number of regrets when I think back. I think I was 17, 18, 19, so I think there was a level of immaturity about my own personality that I think I wish I could have been a more mature student and more mature person throughout. But that's part of my own sort of upbringing and growing up, and just trying to learn about the world and deal with the world, on my own terms. And sometimes things worked out, sometimes they didn't work out, but that's life, I think. But I wish I could have been a bit more mature and could have really taken more advantage of the opportunities that were afforded to me during this time, especially with respect to cinema. But be that as it may, I think still looking back, I felt like there were so many great moments, and I still I feel like it was a time that I was able to feel alive, and everything was new, everything was fresh, and everything was a journey and a discovery. And not only that, I was able on top of that to take these classes as well, Polish cinema class, Brazilian cinema class, many just things, and I was able through those to see films that were unavailable. You couldn't get them unless through these classes, because they didn't have a commercial release, and so you could only watch them through these classes and the like. It was just a wonderful opportunity to learn about these, and you'd sit up late at night and you're about to go to sleep, and you go, oh no, I want to watch this film again. And I remember I had to sit up late at night and watch the film. I had to watch the film Raging Bull for a class, and then be able to discuss it or prepare a certain aspect of it for a class. And it was just a wonderful time, absolutely wonderful time. And it was this sort of thing. It still excites me even now. And through this experience, I think I was able to, as I say, to watch more films during this period than in any other part of my life, such that even now, whenever I hear about a film, and if I've seen it, chances are I'll have seen it during this period. I haven't seen every film that's ever been made, of course. I've only seen one small fraction of a small percentile of 0.000001% of all films. Not even that, right? Because the cinema is a vast ocean. It is way too vast to be able to watch absolutely everything in existence. Of course, I know that. But even so, I think I was able, in my own little way, to have been able to at least watch as many films as I could, given my own time and my own schedule and my own stamina. And even now, I sometimes hear a title and I think, oh, that was something I saw back then, or something like that. So those moments were very important and very formative. And not just those moments with those films, but also with the people that were there, and both on campus and off. And again, one of my great regrets is I wish I could have stayed in touch with those people. But unfortunately, again, that's due to my own failings as a human being. I think I was unable to maintain contact. But maybe one of these days I could maintain contact. And in fact, I think I was contacted very recently by someone in the New Haven community, and by email, and that was really a lovely thing. And so through the YouTube channel, and so I was so happy to have been able to reach out or to hear from this person. And so York Square Cinema, and it was a wonderful time, and I still remember that. Yeah, I remember York Square Cinema was there, and it was right next to the bookstore. So it was wonderful. You could go to the cinema, and then you could go into the bookstore, vice versa, and you can go and then grab a pizza and just eat pizza. And I tended to be somewhat solitary. And so I didn't. After I watched a movie, I'd go and maybe have a slice of pizza on my own, and it was just a wonderful time to be a film lover, I suppose, and the like. And so that was a great time, a really great time. And as I say, it was a long time ago, many years ago, but still, the memories linger. And even now, to this day, over 20 years have passed, but still a lot of those memories linger, very much so. And so so that's kind of where I think I was at my most intense when it came to my own cinema watching and cinema discovery and cinema discussion. And so for anyone who is young and who is maybe in high school or in college and discovering cinema for the first time, it is a really fun, glorious time to make discoveries, both old and new. And so I just really want to encourage you, and I wish you all the best on your own cinematic journeys. It's going to be a fun time, and you're going to make so many friends and so many new, everything is going to be a treasure. And so in a way, I'm kind of jealous because you are experiencing things that I wish I could experience again growing up. And it's a wonderful time. It really is. So please, for those of you out there who are on this journey or just beginning, please enjoy it, because it is worth it and it's a lot of fun. And then, of course, for everyone who is still on their own journey along the way, just enjoy yourselves. It's so much fun, isn't it? It really is. It's great. And in particular, one thing I always like to one of the philosophies that I really believe in, I really truly believe in, is that it's really linked to our own sense of self and our own memories. Cinema is not just cinema; it's cinema and us, right? It's cinema and you, or cinema and me. And then not only how does it integrate into my own consciousness, but then how then I can try to express that in a way that can be relatable, if relatable at all. And that forms a kind of bond. And so I think it's a very fascinating thing. I think it's true for any kind of experience or any kind of art. But for me in particular, I think cinema has that kind of power. So I really believe in that. The idea of the cinema journey. Cinema, it's not just cinema, it's cinema and you, and how you interact with it, and then the memories that you associate with it, and then how that informs part of your life. And then later on, when you think back on it, it becomes like a photo album or something, and you watch a film and it immediately releases that moment in your life that you lived however many years ago when you first saw that film. And so therefore it becomes like a living thing that is forever associated with perception and the like. And so it's incredibly important. But this was just one aspect of that, as I say, many years ago. Okay, so sorry about the long-winded discussion. I hope you can forgive me. But in any event, my friends, thank you very much. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you once again for your time, my dear friends, and cheers.